and then they removed the remains of the people buried there. And there were some relatively important blacks buried there. And one African American, and several African Americans that were buried there were African Americans who had helped the North and fought on the side of the North in the Civil War. The other thing that Joseph Tatum did was the children of African Americans had school only in churches, African American churches, and taught by African American mothers up until Joseph Tatum. And Joseph Tatum built the first school in the state of New Jersey that was a freestanding building for African Americans to go to school. And that building still stands. It is down on Carpenter Street, and it was built by Joseph Tatum, who lies buried here. And it was also part of the Underground Railroad. The bottom of it was a place where escaped slaves would go to hide, but the school was actually used. When I was a child, the African American students, even the ones living in North Woodbury, would walk to the Carpenter Street School and go past the elementary school, what was called Elementary Central. Only a few African American students went to the Elementary Central. Now, there are some other things that are very important about this graveyard. At a distance over in that direction, there is the burial spot of J. Harris Underwood. And J. Harris Underwood was the one who established in 1915 a hospital, the first hospital in Gloucester County. That hospital is today still there, and you can see it from where we're standing, but today it is huge. But at that time it was not huge, but it was a hospital. And J. Harris Underwood was a member of this meeting. We're going to take a walk over to a monument that honors the original Quakers who came here, but I want to show you this wall first. The wall indicates, by the line, it indicates the two sides of the building. Now, there are several things about this that are very interesting. The original building stopped here. And when they decided to add it on, they brought in bricklayers and they put it here. But the bricklayers were not professional bricklayers, or they never would have joined these two sides like this. They were farmers. Bricklayers would have these intertwined, these bricks intertwined. I brought a bricklayer expert over from England, and he told me some very interesting things. One interesting thing was the bricklayers who built this side were farmers. They were not bricklayers. And the second is that whoever laid these bricks was left-handed. Now, don't tell me how he knew that, but he did. He was an expert in bricklaying, of course. Okay. This style of bricks, stretcher, 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 okay? Stretcher, stretcher, stretcher. Header, header, header. Stretcher, stretcher, stretcher. That style is known as English bond, and it's built for strength, not for looks. The front is Flemish bond, and that's built for looks, not for strength. And so the building, well, the peak of the building was running east and west right from the very beginning. Now we're going to walk over to the wood monument. Okay? We are standing in the burial ground at Woodbury Friends Meeting, and the Woodbury Creek is right down there. And when the Wood family came over from Bury in England, they landed in what was then known as Upland, which we now know as Chester, and John Wood, Henry Wood's son, paddled across the Delaware and paddled up the creek and claimed 300 acres of land, and there was a Quaker settlement down on what was called Red Bank Creek, and they established a settlement there. And one of the things that Henry Wood dedicated was that he dedicated half an acre of ground as a burial spot. And so in the beginning they buried their dead down there along with probably some Indians. And in the course of time, National Steel Corporation wanted to buy that land, but there's a law in the state of New Jersey: you cannot build on any land where there are people buried. And so by an ordinance by the court in the state of New Jersey, they decided to move those people who are buried down there, and they moved them here to Woodbury Meeting. So we have two kinds of stones here. These are field stones, and they are the original stones from the burial ground, and they may very well be the headstone of Henry Wood. The practice among Quakers was to be very simple and modest and only put your initials on. We can no longer read the initials, but there are original stones from that burial ground. In 1815, they changed the stones universally from field stone to the other kind of stone that were much easier to work. And so the stones that are taller, all these, okay, those stones are after 1815. And so they dug up the burial, the people who were buried there, and they moved them here by court order. So Henry Wood, the founder of Woodbury, is buried here somewhere. I have several versions of how this went. One version is they came in, took all the bones and everything they got, came in here, dug a great big hole, and put them all in there. They did not try to separate out everybody. And so that's probably the way it went. But among the people that they dug up, they found some who were buried sitting up, and that's an Indian practice. So apparently there were some Indians. But Henry Wood, Alice Sale Wood, John Wood's wife, and the other original Quakers are buried here. Okay. These flowers were brought over here by airplane by Melvin Magnol, who had to get them through customs to get them here, but they are from England, and they are a gift to commemorate the stone. Now I will read the stone. This monument and the remains of 21 known and a number of unknown persons interred in the Woodbury ground near the mouth of the Woodbury Creek were removed to this site March 9, 1951, in accordance with the judgment of the Superior Court of New Jersey, entered February 1951. And that's when this all took place. Now the other side of the stone reads, the Wood family burial ground, a portion of the land deeded in 1682 by Edward Billings of Westminster, Henry Woods Sr., and John Wood, his son, of Bury, England, Lancaster, England, and claimed by the family on arriving here and becoming the first settlers of Woodbury. It was earlier used for burial by the Indians. Here was buried the above named Henry Woodson Sr., who died August 1685, age 64 years. John Wood devised this as a burial place for those who should come after him. Quote, remember the days of old, on side the years of the many generations. For this intent, this stone is erected by the Gloucester County Historical Society of 1912. One last point, and that is we are looking down here at what was the Woodbury Creek, and in the spring